Father in heaven, you created the inside part of us. And we've been cooperating in that during our short lives. As we talk more about the inside stuff, we ask that it will be your Spirit that's in there, working with us, creating that inside stuff. In Jesus' name, amen. From your green Bibles, page 20 of the New Testament, you can start with numbering over Matthew. Matthew 23. This is really out of character from what I would normally focus on in the things that Jesus said and taught. But we're in spirituality study here. We're talking about the parts of us that are not just the outside part that we have been cultured to put on the outside. If you take a baby as soon as it's born, and then no matter what culture that baby's from, you have that baby adopted by parents in an extremely different kind of culture, a very different culture than the culture of the baby's mother and father. In spite of powerful genetics, which for much of the last century we've been taught determine what kind of person somebody's going to be. We know now that we didn't know as much as we thought. And you've probably heard the term epigenetics. Epigenetics, from the Greek word epi, it's a prefix, which means on, upon, or along, or before, or after, at different times in early Greek usage. So epigenetics looks at the part of what makes an organism, in this case human beings, what they are, that is actually heritable, but it's not something that's coded for in DNA. Turns out that you can actually pass certain traits that are not coded for in the genome because there's the way that the DNA is coded, C-O-A-T, not coded, C-O-D-I-N-G, C-O-D-I-N-G and C-O-A-T-I-N-g, wearing a code. You've got coating and you've got coding. The coding is what the base pairs are, how it's programmed. From not simply like Mendel and pea plants. Usually it's not that simple. It is with some things, but very few things. It's usually very complicated inheritance. The coating is stuff that's really in the way of switches being able to be turned on and turned off. And sometimes certain experiences or behaviors can chemically result in removing the coatings the stuff around the outside, sort of the sleeve molecules around the DNA, and results in turning things on and off, or keeping things that would be going to turn on from turning on, and they may never come on. So no matter what your inheritance, if you're a little baby and you're raised in a certain way, it greatly impacts exactly what you turn out to be. It turns out that there are some things even about your DNA and about the epigenetics that impact your DNA that might even impact your experience on the inside, your feelings, your moods. We like to think that it's huge. It's huge in terms of the epigenetic impact, how parents raise a child. And it is. It's huge what kind of a culture you're in. If you're in a culture where the people sort of backslap a lot and get together in big groups every weekend with their big families, and everything's a party and everybody's loud and they sort of banter and insult each other fondly and that sort of thing. If you take somebody who's from a typical Swedish family and you expose them to that, they think that there's psychosis. They think you're nuts. And they're very uncomfortable. In many cases, it's a mismatch. That kind of stuff does shape who you are on the inside, that's true. But there's another huge factor that shapes your inside and your outside. Not just your parents, not just your friends in your neighborhood, not just your church, not just the culture at your school. And schools have different cultures, don't they? You go to a different college that's an undergrad college like PUC, you could get this, a bachelor's degree like you're probably most of them trying to get here. And if you go somewhere else, it can have such a different feeling just being there. Some of it's the buildings, some of it's the traditions, some of it's how they do the housing arrangements, some of it's the rules, some of it's the majors. But there's a sort of culture from the founders of that school who started it, set it up a certain way, and kind of took care of it at first, and then things get passed along, like they always do. I went to PUC for 5 years, from the time I was 16 until I was 21. And then when I was finished with PUC, I graduated and gone to pastor in Arizona. I went to different schools around Arizona where I pastored to keep studying. I went to the Pima College, I went to Mojave College, and I went to Arizona State University. And the feeling on campus was like you weren't even actually, it could have been the difference between going to school or church or the store in terms of the feeling when you get there. It's like, okay, schools all feel like there's not a chance. It didn't feel like the same world. None of those schools felt like the same world themselves. But there's another huge factor. And we downplay this factor. Because even though we've moved past thinking that the only thing that matters is your programming, well, this is what I have to do. I mean, I'm just that kind of person. I inherited the gene for kleptomania, so I shoplift. I inherited the gene for alcoholism, so of course I just can't stay away from alcohol. I inherited the gene for spirituality, so I'm very spiritual. I gravitate toward meditation, prayer, Bible study, going to church, that sort of thing, because that's just how I am. And by the way, there's notable brain structure differences and brain function differences that can be seen in imaging for people who are feeling and living very spiritually. It looks different in the brain. You can discern that in an fMRI. You can discern that in the PET scan. You can discern that with EEG. This is the factor I'm talking about, and it's the same thing we started to speak about before we had the test last Monday. There's a whole nother part of us besides our parents and our culture and our biology. It's the part inside. That part other people cannot see. And the only way to get to have access to it is if we share it with them. That's the part that it feels that we do not have any kind of choice about or any control over. But part of the reason it seems like we don't is because there's a strong culture saying that we don't for several generations before you and I were born. Well, a couple generations before I was born. But if you are in a culture that believes that you have control over that inside part, it seems more real to you that you do, and you set about doing that. From Matthew chapter 23, we have Jesus talking to the people during his time that were known to be religious. Not clergy people, not the priests, just the sort of the conservative religious people at his church. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law. Now, why did they say mint, dill, and cumin? It's like, well, they're farmers. Of course they tithe that. Those are weeds. Those are voluntary. Those are herbs that come up typically on their own in this context. You may cook them. You may cook with them, so you have them in your herb garden on your balcony by your kitchen door. But he's basically saying you even pay tithe to edible weeds. Making sure you don't miss out on doing the letter of the law.
This verse 13.
Verse 23. For you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, and mercy, and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. Again, that's referring to doing the less important things very carefully and letting the huge things go by with neglect. This is a reference to Leviticus 11, where it's instructed of the Jews that they not eat certain creatures. And there were some people who were so conservative and so orthodox that they literally would use a filter to make sure they weren't getting any little creatures that are too small to see that they eat that weren't clean meat. But it says, you're busy doing that while you're having a feast on camel meat, Camels obviously are enormous and they're unclean on the grounds that they don't have a double hoof and also chew their cud. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Greed, note that. They're full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup, so that the outside also may be clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside look beautiful, but inside they're full of the bones of the dead and all kinds of filth. So you also on the outside look righteous to others, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. So you look righteous to others, you Pharisees, but on the inside, you're filthy. You have greed and self-indulgence on the inside. We actually are studying about something that has come to mean bringing some sort of congruence to what's inside and what's outside. The part that other people can see, and then the part that's on the inside. Spirituality has, it carries with it, in all the things that it means, the notion of lining those two things up. I made a reference, I think last Wednesday, to the church at Laodicea in Revelation, where we're told that God expresses his revulsion towards what he considers the most repulsive, the thing that makes him, you know, that expression that makes its way around in the movies, modern movies, and Snapchat and Facebook and other memes. You throw up a little bit in your mouth. Well, he wasn't talking about that kind of being grossed out. He said it was a kind that is a projectile kind, comes right out, can't keep it in. And that's being Laodicean, being neither hot nor cold. Now, in terms of righteousness and spirituality and that sort of thing, a person that would be cold would obviously mean something opposite what would be hot. And it doesn't really specify exactly. It gives some pretty strong hints, though. A person that is lukewarm, I think, is like these Pharisees. They are doing the best they can to have window dressing, to make a facade, but it's just like what you present out on the curb. Good curb appeal, but you open the door and then you're looking at the backyard. There's nothing there. There's nothing to make good on what it looks like when people see it on the outside. And there's a lot of people like that. As a pastor, I have been privy to a lot of my colleagues over the years, not the majority, but an unfortunate number of my colleagues that speak openly among each other, like when the pastors are together, about how they act and how they and their families act in front of the church members, and then how they act when they get away and they're free to be themselves. So that I consider that to be very unfortunate. Number one, if they're having struggles, sometimes those struggles might be the kind that mean this isn't a good year for them to be actively in ministry. They're not at a place where that's best. Two, if they're at a place where their struggles are pretty much like everybody that's coming to church, then they could be more transparent about some of those struggles so that they can be partnered with their congregation, with their community in trying to work out what works best to get through those struggles. The notion, though, of being cold, the Pharisees weren't cold. The Pharisees were, I think, lukewarm because they were pretending to be hot and they were cold on the inside. There's people that you know, though, that don't make any pretense. They're straight up about it. They're selfish, they're self-indulgent, and they're going to be the first to tell you. They're going to let you know straight up. You ask them, what do you believe? I believe that I'm going to have a good time, and if I can get mine before anyone else, I'm going to get it. And if there's anything still there on the table that people haven't gotten that's theirs, I'm going to take that too. And I'm going to have a great time, and I'm going to live large, and I'm going to try to make a big footprint as I go through life. I've got a big ego, and I'm going to stroke it, and I'm going to look for other people to stroke it. And I'm going to try to be ridiculously wealthy and powerful. And if someone gets in my way, They'll tell you. And then you watch them and you say, oh, sure enough, I had the plain, honest truth come out of that person's mouth. That's what's called. And God says to us through that prophetic revelation, that's one thing, but that's not the thing that really grosses me out. What really grosses me out is when somebody is like that, but then they say they're not. And they go through and affiliate with all these ideas of being so kind and generous. And they're like, it's like baiting a hook, so you try to hide the hook, You use fake goodness so you can hurt people, rather than just saying, I'm going to hurt you, better stay out of my way. I said, I kind of respect that. I won't go that way, but I can respect that. And I can also respect someone who's trying to make themselves congruent with what's on the inside and what's on the outside, that say, I'm really trying to be what makes other people feel valued and have courage and feel love and safety. I'm trying to do that. That's the goal of my life. And then they do that, and they think it, and they try, and they do it, and they think it, and they try. Now, this is going to sound kind of shocking, but I'm going to counsel separating this whole matter from whether you go to heaven or whether you go to hell. I do not believe that you can help yourself get into heaven instead of getting into hell by trying to be the best person you can on the inside and outside. I do not think that's going to help you to go to heaven. Do I think it's important that you go to heaven? Yes. But that is stated as something that's a gift. Specifically, that's not your paycheck. You don't clock in the hours to earn it. You can't earn it. You can't do anything to earn it. Nothing. Not it. So we're not talking about staying out of hell. You can take care of that by asking and hanging on to what you've accepted when it's given to you. You can handle that. What I'm talking about is, what about between now and then? Then what? I'm talking about what can actually bring you joy in this life instead of constant anxiety. What can make it so you can feel like you're actually free, 100% free, no matter what is ever done to you, whatever you're allowed or not allowed to do, even the mistakes that you made. You can still feel 100% free, and you can feel joy all the way to the core. And that's kind of what heaven is like. You can have that now. We started talking on Monday and Wednesday about right action of the will. I mentioned there's some practices that some Christians and other religious groups have come up with to help exercise, like going to the gym for your willpower. There may be a few people here who could not identify with the statement. I've made some resolutions. I've said, I'm going to this, I'm going to that. Wellness seems to be one that's easy to pick on, fitness goals. But not just fitness. When you're in school, it's how you're going to pace out your homework. You know you have to do these projects. You know you've got to read this book. You know you've got to write 7 papers and everything. And for some reason, that all ends up in dead week. Every bit of it. Well, I'm going to give you the opportunity not to have to wait for dead week, if you choose, to work on your paper for this class. Remember the paper?
Yes.
There was something about that?
Yes.
I want to just talk just a little bit about it. It's really simple. I don't want to see something that's done in purple and orange crayon on the back of a paper plate or anything like that, or scrolled out the day before you turn it in on a napkin from Denny's in the middle of the night. I mean, it's something to put some time into. I'd like you to write a paper that is a brainstorm. A brainstorm. You know you. We've been talking about all kinds of things, and we're going to keep talking with them. I don't want you to write the paper tonight. We can start on the things. We're far enough along. The reason that I wait to give the description even is that there's some people who are the opposite of wait till the last minute. There are people who go through not just life, but school, just checking things off the list. They're doers, but it's an action. And they just go through the motions. There's things we've talked about that we wouldn't have talked about if you looked at it first, and I wanted it to impact the thing and not get 3 or 4 of you to get it crossed off your list and put in your file the second week of school. So we've gone far enough that starting to work on it would make sense.
How long do you want a paper to be?
I don't know.
I think it was 5 pages.
How long do you want to live?
I think it was 5. I think on your syllabus,
How long do you want to live?
it's at 5.
Whatever it's up.
Isn't it 5?
There you go. Good answer. Good answer. As far as what it is, the brainstorm is you're brainstorming about a plan for your spiritual journey. A program, your own program. And it's like if you were the personal trainer or the spiritual director. And that's an interesting term, spiritual director. In your plan, consider whether it would be best that you get somebody to mentor you in that plan, or a succession of people, or different people for different aspects. Should you be going to somebody and saying, like, say your best friend, your closest spiritual friend, can we have a buddy system here? Hold me accountable. I've heard a lot about holding accountable in the Christian community in the last 20 years. That's been a thing where you make covenants with a buddy, with a partner, a spiritual partner. It doesn't have to be your best friend. It can be somebody that's separate from your social stuff. They're your spiritual partner. Not a romantic partner, like your spouse. Usually you need to, and it could be, but it would be rare. I think that your romantic partner would be ideal. Sometimes, but not usually. I can remember going to one youth specialist convention while I was youth pastor, and a speaker got up to the main assembly meeting. I think he was a Baptist pastor of some sort, and he had gone to a Baptist clergy conference, and was staying. It was in a hotel conference center, and his conference, or whatever they call it, convention, was sending him to this seminar thing, and the whole hotel was just full of everybody. He came with his pastoral staff, and he was one of the associates because he was a youth pastor. And he was there with his whole pastoral staff and everybody. He goes back to the hotel room, and he gets the remote. He sits on the edge of the bed, and he looks at the little advertising things for the different channels that are sort of on a sticker on the remote. Guy with the wife and kids at home, so he doesn't subscribe to all the channels on the cable. So he was just a little curious about, those kind of channels that you can get in the hotel. So he turns it on, and there's a channel where you have to pay like $6.50 or $12 or $3 or whatever it is, where you can watch things that you don't want to see if your children are there, probably. Generally, if you're a Baptist pastor, generally you're not going to do that in front of your kids. So he puts it on and he sits there and he's watching what looks like, he got in the middle of some way out there porno flick. He's watching it for a few minutes, and then it dawns on him, wait a minute, I didn't give my credit card to pay for this room. He says, I recognize that this actually was the senior pastor who put down his credit card for all the rooms. That means they're not even going to give me the bill. So he shut off the TV and he picked up the phone and he called the desk to say, if I buy one of these movies, which he already had, if I buy one of these movies, does that show up on the bill? And it tells what it was and everything. I said, yeah, it tells what it was. It tells what you bought, what channel and what movie and everything. He hangs up the phone and he said, oh man, I'm in trouble. So he said he was just at the end, he didn't know. So he picked up the phone. He didn't call the senior pastor first. He called the person that was his spiritual partner, his person who he had covenanted with to help him get through things that had any spiritual dimension to them, even how to make decisions at work or with his family. And he said, honestly, and he was a Baptist pastor's kid and a Baptist pastor's grandkid, and the way he described it, sitting on the edge of the bed before he made that call to his spiritual partner, he said, I would have killed myself. Probably I would have just, there was no way out of this. It was just over for me. Because stuff that was on the inside was now coming to the outside. And if you didn't have somebody he could just sort of standing on the edge of the bridge, metaphorically trying to decide whether to jump or not, he called the spiritual partner, and it saved his life. So that's an extreme example. And that's very mundane. It might be just as valuable in the long run, the number of times you call and say, what do you think about this book? Or I'm thinking I'd like to explore this area. Have you heard anything about this? Or I'm going to get into this. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Is this, this, I think some people might think this is kind of new agey. Do you think this is this isn't godly? Should I stay away from this? And in some cases, maybe you should have, and your spiritual partner would say to you, yeah, why don't you do a reality check? Why don't you check yourself before you do that? Let's take a week and think about that. Let's get some counsel from someone else, whether that's a good thing or not, just Reiki or whatever, beads or, there's an endless supply of things that, well, they might help. But then again, some of them might be a step toward pretty much just leaving your own faith. They could be. It depends on where you are, and it depends on how you're using them. But a partner would track with you. So anyway, that's just an example of something that could be a dimension in making a spiritual curriculum for yourself, a program, a plan. What other things? Would you read books? Or does that leave you cold? Would you look on audible.com and find books that you could listen to in your Bluetooth when you're running? Will you meditate? What role will approaching deliberately or not approaching any kind of church involvement play in this? If you kind of haven't been doing the church thing, would it be better for you to? Or if you have been doing it, has the way you've been doing it been beyond improvement? Is there any way you could do things inside and outside that would be different? I mean, just for example, do you go to church and find yourself between the back door and your seat? Do you have an experience that would overlap a little with the fashion show? It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. Man, I've seen guys that are on the runway in the dining commons in chapel, and I mean it's really clear. They're to the nines every time they're out, and they're doing the thing like a peacock, puts up its feathers. Check me out. I'm breeding stock. I'm ready. That kind of stuff it's the fact that we are inherently reproductive is not evil. But can it get in the way and block out the light from shining on certain parts that are really important in your insights. Can it? Yes?
So for the paper, you just want us to make a spiritual plan, but an essay format, basically?
Yes, I do. I'd like you to make a spiritual plan in essay format. And when I say essay format, I would be suspicious of a spiritual plan's reality if it seemed like what you turn in for English 101 or for senior composition in high school academy. I actually doubt that a person's spiritual life is very similar to the shape of introductory paragraph wherein you tell the 3 points that you're going to tell. Then you tell about point 1 in one section, and then you tell about point 2 in the next section, you tell about point 3 in the next section, and then in the conclusion, you say what you said in those 3, and then you leave the reader something to think about. That's a good exercise. But here's a hot tip. Those are training wheels essays. Very, very few sincere writers get very far into their career and become wonderful, epic writers without sometime getting a wrench and taking the training wheels off the bike and writing with soul. So this isn't a lower division class, is it? What is the number in this class?
I think it's 300.
This is a 300 class, it's an upper division class. So we can.
Oh, it's 200.
It's 235? Oh, it's almost upper.
I thought it was 300.
So you've already had 101. Probably you've had 102 also. Some of you have even had great books already. So it would be more impressive. Yes, it would be more impressive if it wasn't designed to be impressive. If it really smacked of, I'm making a plan here that I could actually do. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm walking all the way over on your left toward the cold end. If it is the honest truth that what you're saying is, look, I'm flat out going to be a hedonist. I'm just trying to have a good time. I want to play my way through this life, and I want more toys when I go. Then talk about what your insights can do to support that and how that fits your values and how you can do that with some sort of deliberateness. Or if you believe that things should not be deliberate, tell me why that is. And describe for me what the spiritual ramifications are of that. Fair enough? You don't have to, I don't want you to lie though. I don't want you to say, well, let's see, it seems like he's the kind of dude that's like, here, I'm going to write to that. Forget that. Write to what you honestly are. I'm not going to share the essays with anybody. Okay? You're going to submit the essays online. We're going to make it things so that you can turn it in as an attachment in the assignment online. And I'm the only person that's going to read it. And I'm not looking for you to try to play a spiritual teacher's pet.
What does it do?
What's it say in the thing? Let's check. See here. Term paper due on the 29th of, the 9th of December. So it's the last period. Now, it's due before you come in this room and the class starts, the last day. It's not due at the end of the day, it's due before that. I don't want a rough draft. If you want to write a rough draft, that helps you in the writing process, that's fine, but I don't want it. I don't want a hard copy. I want you to say the truth.
Does the essay have to be MLA format?
I would If you want to follow style sheet, I would follow APA. I think there's probably most of PUC follows APA, am I right? Does it
Some
go back
teachers
and
do,
forth?
some teachers don't.
Some go one way, they just don't take a position. Okay, well, I'll say APA because theologians, when I was trained, used Kate Turabian 6th, and you don't know Turabian, it's a variant of the Chicago style sheet. We won't do that. I wrote as an undergrad everything in MLA here at PUC, but I've been doing APA as a psychologist, so we'll go with APA.
Most of APAs actually can't speak in first person, so,
Yes, you can,
but,
but I'm giving you permission.
oh, okay.
Actually, APA, after undergraduate, every institution will give you their exceptions style sheet. My exception style sheet is you may speak in first person. I go back and forth on that. I do speak in first person in the papers that I write in my program, and my dissertation is going to have a lot of first person in it.
Could you post a rubric?
No. Because you're not a machine. Rubrics are algorithms. You know what I'm saying?
Kind of, but most people next know what you expect.
I don't know what I expect.
Yeah.
I expect you
To
to
share
do
your
business with what's real in your life. And spirituality is like that. Spirituality fits no rubric. If it's rubric, it's probably pharisaical in terms of spirituality. On what? Rituals and practices. I'll come back to it. I think most people haven't. There's no legitimacy that's conveyed by being drastic or exciting.
Very verbal.
You know when you go to church or you're in academy or whatever, you're at youth meeting, and they bring somebody who's tatted up from head to toe, and they've got piercing scars everywhere from like the studs they took out of their skull, and they've been in Folsom and Pelican Bay and everything, and now they're a Christian. And they're exciting. They've got an exciting conversion story. Here they are up in front of the church, and everyone's going, "Oh, man, God bless them. They're so interested in this. They should, let's make them a pastor." Yada yada yada. And here's two sets of parents sitting in church. That person's parents, and they're going, "Yes, they're so proud," and everyone's saying, "You must be so proud, mighty man for God that you got there and your son." And then next to them, a pew away, are parents whose kid pretty much just did what was in their best interest and everybody's best interest all along. Went to college without screwing around, never got arrested. Just always been to church every week, working as an usher, helping to collect the offering now that they're in their early 30s and they're a deacon and everything. It's like the older brother in the prodigal son story. The older brother has a legitimate spirituality.
Since it's like a plan, does that mean it has to be future tense?
Your past can be part of it. It should, if it's a plan though, it should involve right now and from maybe, if you're in the moment, maybe it's what you're going to do with one day. That would be one approach. Here's how I'm going to approach one day and then I'm going to do it again. Here's my model. I'll be right back.
Literally, this is my spiritual faith. This is my life. There's no correlation
Well, when you're
whatsoever.
done, you could count the words, but I don't have a minimum or a maximum.
It's just the pages.
Get it done. If it's obvious that it's poorly thought out nonsense and it's so short that it's just like, here's your 100 words, and I read it and I say, there's no depth to it. They didn't really give you a assignment.
Yeah.
I'm going to grade it based on, ready for this? Subjective judgment of whether you've done the job.
Oh.
And guess what?
Just turn.
Guess what? When you have a rubric,
Tend to only follow that.
that's a smoke screen. Because each item on the rubric that a grader, often the professor, often the TA, looks at, now it's subjective. It's just that there's something in between, and it breaks the subjective into little pieces. That is what we do to convince people of something, is break it into little pieces and say, oh, we care for each piece. And you look at each piece one at a time, and you got nothing but subjective. Okay? You've got a rubric, it has one item on it. There's your rubric.
I'll probably finish this shit tomorrow. I'm not trying to do it later.
Oh, the percentage of the grade. Let's see. 15? It's 15. Who said that? So you? I was looking down. There you go. Yes, ma'am. No. Just do that. You look at
I've
it.
taken it too many times.
That thing that you're wanting me to do,
I'm like, what people asking questions.
that's something that people turn papers in without actually doing themselves. Last phrase. Do I see any underlining or red or anything? I don't. Grammar problem? No. Boom, turn it in. No. Finish it and let it sit for a day or two and then go back and read it like I graded on the paper. You know, if you don't do that on your papers, you're costing yourself 15% on your papers for the rest of your life systematically. If you don't do that one thing, if you don't get it done, a few days early, and then let it sit and come back and look at it, you are costing yourself 15% systematically from now on through the rest of your graduate work.
Do you know if the Dropbox is already open on Canvas? For
I
some-
know that it's not, unless you open it. You didn't open it, did you? Okay. Nope. It's not yet. Today would be too soon, when we just talked about it.
I mean,
I'll open it when it seems like it wouldn't be too
Get
soon.
that shit done.
I'll open it pretty soon. Okay? And Kelly, we'll do that on Wednesday.
I do it by tomorrow.
Are you all relatively a little bit comfortable with the idea of writing this paper yet? Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
For Friday, are we having class or can we have basic work on the paper?
We are having full-on regular class on Friday. And I will be here with my special new Thanksgiving tie. Nobody robs me of my day to wear my Thanksgiving tie. We will be meeting as,
When is this week the last?
are you having a lot of classes or just canceling classes at the deal?
Yeah.
Well, I have good news.
Is next week?
Yeah.
We get out at 10 o'clock,
I'm officially not on Thanksgiving's next week.
or 10 till 10.
Oh, this is awkward.
And we have few enough times together. So I would like us to be together, just like normal. Okay? You get a whole week. Off. Well,
Are we gonna do our test afterward?
You'll get them by Friday.
you get them by Friday.
Oh, no. Oh, man.
Most likely Wednesday, so I'm shooting.
Quizzes are 25, midterm is 20, final is 25, term paper is 15, and participation, now, that's 15 also for participation. What's participation?
Attendance, please.
Crystal. You heard that over again. Case in point.
He said it too.
I said in my mind.
You see, spirituality is about having the inside and the outside become congruent. On Wednesday, we will talk more about specific practices. I see your hand, I won't forget it. Go ahead. Do you have that? No, okay. I will, as Kelly's asking, when we get to more specific practices, but on Wednesday, I'm gonna ask if you would like an opportunity, and I'll go to the board and we'll talk about it, to look at, we have very little time left. And I'd like to look at the specifics that would be the most helpful to you. Maybe the ones I feel like would be, or put down on my class schedule. I'm trying to guess what would be most helpful to you, but I'd rather hear from you if you want to say, please talk about this, I don't want to get through this class stuff talking about that. Okay? So you'd be able to give your input into how we proceed from here. Okay?